It started like any other peaceful morning. The sun filtered through my home studio blinds as I set up for a day of precision audio work. My world, nestled neatly within those acoustically treated walls, is one of subtlety tweaking frequencies, fine-tuning vocals, chasing sonic perfection in whispers. This morning, I was deep into a low-value mix, barely above a whisper, when a loud, aggressive knock slammed into my front door like a clap of thunder. It startled me. I wasn't expecting anyone, certainly not this early, and definitely not with that kind of energy. I opened the door to find a sharply dressed HOA representative, her face flushed with irritation, her clipboard clenched tightly in one hand. "You need to turn that music down. Now," she snapped. I blinked, confused. "What music?" I asked. "I'm mixing at studio levels extremely low. You probably hear more from your fridge compressor." But she wasn't interested in facts. "We've had complaints. If you don't turn it down, we're calling the police," she said, her voice firm, her posture rigid like she was waiting for a standoff. I took a slow breath. I've worked in audio engineering for over a decade. I've scored film, mastered albums, and designed sound for everything from indie games to major ad campaigns, all from this very room. I'd invested thousands in high-end soundproofing panels, bass traps, and door seals. My work was practically silent from outside the studio. I tried to explain, politely, that my decibel levels were within residential limits, even lower, and that I always respected my neighbors. But she wasn't having it. She had the scent of authority and wasn't letting go. Not 10 minutes later, a pair of squad cars pulled up in front of my house. 2 officers stepped out, exchanging quick words with the HOA rep before approaching my door. I greeted them calmly, invited them in, and showed them around. "I understand there's a noise complaint," I said, gesturing toward the studio. They stepped inside cautiously, maybe expecting speakers to blast them across the room. Instead, they found a serene space, walls lined with foam, a mixing console softly lit, and faint instrumental music playing at levels quieter than a whisper. One officer leaned in. "This is it?" he asked, eyebrows raised. "Yes, sir. I'm a professional sound engineer. Everything I do is carefully measured. I keep levels down out of courtesy and because I like my ears." The second officer smiled faintly, nodding. They glanced at each other, then walked back outside to talk to the HOA rep again. I followed them out just in time to catch the HOA representative insisting I had been shaking the walls earlier. The officers looked back toward my house, clearly unconvinced. One of them turned to her and said, "Ma'am, we were just inside. There's no noise violation. In fact, it's one of the quietest setups I've seen." She started to object again, but this time, the authority had shifted. Seeing their reaction, I decided it was time to turn the situation into something more constructive. I told them I was happy to provide my decibel logs and offered to walk the HOA through the studio's soundproofing measures. "I understand the concern," I said to her, calmly. "But my work depends on clarity and precision. I can assure you, nothing I do here disrupts anyone's peace." There was a long pause and awkward silence. The kind that fills the air when someone realizes they might have made a scene without understanding the facts. The HOA rep glanced at the officers, then back at me, her expression tightening. Without another word, she turned and walked briskly to her car, her colleague trailing behind. The officers, now more amused than anything, shrugged and offered a polite goodbye, thanking me for my cooperation. As I closed the door and walked back to my console, I reflected on the irony of it all. In a world full of distractions and disturbances, I had designed a space dedicated to control and quiet. And yet, silence itself had become suspicious. The incident spread quietly among the neighbors in the following days. A few even stopped by to apologize on behalf of the HOA or to ask questions about my work, curious about the setup. Some were surprised to learn how much went into proper soundproofing, how quiet professional mixing could really be. The HOA never followed up, never apologized, and never filed another complaint. I didn't expect them to. But in that moment, when the police validated my truth and the HOA had to retreat from their own assumptions, I felt a rare sense of victory. Not the kind you cheer for, but the kind that affirms your quiet, steady integrity. I didn't raise my voice, didn't retaliate, didn't escalate. I let the facts speak at the same frequency. I work in subtle, precise, undeniable. So the day that began as a quiet one ended even quieter, but not just because of the acoustics. It ended with the sound of misplaced authority falling silent, of judgment giving way to understanding. And as I sat back down and resumed my mix, the levels just right, the frequencies in perfect harmony, I couldn't help but smile. It was, after all, a day like any other, except this time, silence won.